Hey everyone, it's Kristen from k.becca, and in this video I'm going to show you how I cut my own custom stencils with the Silhouette Cameo. We're going to start off in Silhouette Studio, and I have the Designer Edition, which allows you to open and work with SVG files. I'll be using the Heart Stencil No. 2 cut file that you can find in my shop. A link to that will be in the description area below. I have the file open in Silhouette Studio here, and the original file size is 7 inches by 7 inches, but I want to scale that down a bit, so I'm going to go over to the toolbar on the right side of the screen and click to open the transform window. I'm using Silhouette Studio version 4.1, and the menu items are a little bit different than in earlier versions. The scale window used to be a separate item, but in this version you'll find it in the transform window under the tab with the little diagonal arrows icon. Before I change the dimensions, I'll click the lock icon to lock the aspect ratio. Again, this is different than earlier versions of Silhouette Studio where there was a checkbox to lock the aspect ratio. After the aspect ratio is locked, I'll change the width to 6 inches and click the apply button, and you'll see that the height will change to 6 inches to match the width since it's a 1:1 square aspect ratio. I'll move the cut file up to the corner of the artboard so I won't have a lot of wasted space around the stencil. And now we're ready to cut our stencil. I'll click the Send tab at the top right of the screen, and then I'll choose Cut from the Actions drop-down menu, and I'm using the Auto Blade for my cutting tool, so I'll leave that as is. From the Material drop-down menu, I'll choose Stencil Material as a starting point, but I'm using Duralar for my stencil material, and I know that it takes a deeper cut setting, so I'll adjust the cut depth. Normally, I'd use a depth of 6, but my blade is brand new, so I'm going to bump that down to 5, and I'm going to do 2 passes. I like that in this version of Silhouette Studio, they've replaced the double cut checkbox with passes, so you can do more than 2 now if you need to without having to send the file to the machine more than once. One more thing, I'll just bump the speed up to 3. My Cameo is on and ready, so let's head over there and get the mat ready before I send the file. I'll open the cover for the Cameo, and my Auto Blade is loaded and ready in the Tool 1 area, the one with the little red circle. I have a mat here with the Duralar already on it, and this is my favorite material for cutting stencils. I'll load the mat, and then I'll head back over to Silhouette Studio and click the Send button to send the file to cut. Cut time for this stencil was about 10 minutes since I did 2 passes, and I'll speed this part up and add a little bit of music so you don't have to watch it in real time. I'll be back when it's finished. Okay, so now I'll unload the mat and peel the stencil off. You can see how cleanly it cut and how easy it is to remove from the mat. All of those little hearts cut out perfectly. And we have lots of little leftover hearts on our mat, so I'll scrape those off with my scraper tool. And now I have little heart confetti that I can use for shaker cards or add to envelopes when I mail cards. Now we'll use our newly made stencil to make a card background. I have a piece of white cardstock that is cut to 4.25 inches wide by 5.5 inches tall, and I'll place that down onto my craft mat and place the stencil over it. Then I'll tape the stencil in place right along the edge of the cardstock on 3 sides so it doesn't move around while I'm working with it. I'll be using 3 colors of Distress Oxide inks for this background: Worn Lipstick, Abandoned Coral, and Picked Raspberry. To add the color, I'm using these little foam finger daubers, and I have a separate one for each color. I'll tap the first dauber into the Worn Lipstick ink to load it, and then I'll rub it onto the cardstock in a swirling motion, reloading the dauber with ink as needed. I'll add this color to about the top third of the cardstock, and then I'll come in with the Abandoned Coral and repeat the process for the middle third of the card. I'll take the Abandoned Coral up into that Worn Lipstick a little bit to blend the 2 colors, and then I'll finish with the Picked Raspberry on the bottom third of the cardstock, again blending it up a little bit into the color above it. After I'm finished adding ink, I'll remove the tape and the stencil and place the stencil into a container of water that I have off camera so the ink won't dry on it, and you can see just how well this stenciled background came out. Duralar is my favorite material to use when I make stencils because I like the thickness of it and it holds up really well to washing, so you can use stencils made with it over and over again. It also cuts very cleanly with the Cameo, and I like that there's a matte option because, like I mentioned earlier, I can see the stencil better when I'm working with it than I can with a completely transparent stencil. But Duralar is definitely not the only material that you can use to make stencils and get great results. I've also used clear acetate, and while I can't see it as well when I'm working with it because it's clear, it cuts great and gives great stenciled results. I just use the C-line laser acetate that I also use for laser printing and foiling. If you're looking for a more economical option, you can also cut stencils from index dividers that you typically use in binders and notebooks. I found this package of 8 dividers for $1 at the Dollar Tree, and they cut really well with the Cameo. The material is a little more flexible than the Duralar or the acetate, but I haven't had problems stenciling with these, and I like that they're colored so you can easily see where the stencil is while you're working. Lastly, for single-use stencils or stencils that you'll be using with a medium that won't need to be washed off, cardstock is a great choice and is something that most of us already have around. These obviously won't hold up as well as stencils made with the other materials that I've shown, but sometimes you don't need a reusable stencil, and in these cases, cardstock is a good choice. You can find a full list of supplies used in this video in the description area below or in the area below the video if you're watching on k.becca.com. I hope that you found this video to be helpful, and if you'd like to see more stenciling and stencil making tutorials, please give this video a thumbs up and consider subscribing to my channel. Thanks for watching, and I hope you'll tune in again soon.